Unknowable. "I'm sorry," she said, but I told her never to say she was sorry. "I don't want to hurt you," she explained, but I assured her it was what I wanted. What she didn't understand was that there was a time for kindness and there was a time for cruelty. It's what made us human, that we could be both angel and demon, that we could love and hate for all the best reasons. I've desired many things, and sometimes I've been fortunate to get what I wanted. I wanted to marry the daughter of a political kingmaker, and I did. I wanted political office, and I won it. I even wanted people to love me, and they did, but I never loved them back. I loved no one, although it had never been my ambition to love anyone. I wasn't supposed to feel anything for Lilla. She didn't feel anything for me as far as I knew, and yet she was mine for a time. I told no one about Lilla, at least no one that mattered, and she was under strict instruction to keep our meetings confidential. After all, I was a public figure with a reputation to protect. I was a man with everything to lose, and I wasn't accustomed to losing. But I couldn't lose Lilla, even when I realized she'd betrayed me. The man listening to Chopin's Nocturne in B-flat minor was a small-statured man, a heavy brow concealing a lifetime of indiscretions. There was a power in keeping so much from the world, but his secrecy felt more like a penance. How he wanted to tell everyone what he was really like, and how he feared that one day he might find the courage to do so. Every night he began writing what he called a confession, before promptly deleting the contents. He would start over again the next night, never completing more than a page before realizing he wasn't in his right mind. A congressman in his right mind was expected to play the savior, not the fool. The congressman had a name, which in recent years had become a familiar one to anyone following the acrimonious dispute over the future of artificial intelligence. Was the development of AI to continue unabated, or were the risks of AI outpacing human intelligence too great? The congressman's name was Cleve Howe, a resilient opportunist and ambitious strategist who'd won his office by tapping into mounting fear of what AI might do once it realized it no longer needed a master. Would humans begin to serve machines as machines had long served mankind? People had never been so afraid of machines, and Congressman Howe, or Cleve as he preferred to be called in his inner circle, had been fanning the flames for years. His anti-tech stance was the stuff of legend. But for all his gravitas, he was ridiculed mercilessly. It was said that even the wheel was too much technology for Congressman Howe to fathom, and that he only hated technology because it couldn't be used to make him a better human being. They were right about him being a terrible person, but they were wrong about him hating technology, although he did hate what he couldn't understand. He took no issue with AI, although it worried him that it might become impossible to tell the difference between a robot and a human being. What Cleve never revealed to anyone was that he believed himself a robot, since he never felt at ease around other people. He never understood them and suspected he was different. And as a boy, he long hoped he was a robot, or some intergalactic being come to Earth to lord it over people. As an adult, Cleve decided he wasn't less human than everyone else, but rather more human, and that the only way to make people more human was to diminish their increasing dependence on technology. As if technology alone could make people happy. Of course, there were pills to make people happy, and there were pills to make people look younger. It was said that there would soon be pills powerful enough to cure mortality, but that only the elites would be able to afford them. Although Cleve only wanted to keep machines from becoming too human, he earned the admiration of anyone who thought technology was the root of all human ills, not the solution. And Cleve leveraged that popularity to win elected office and stay in office for 2 terms. He was up for re-election in several months, and the opposition was more determined than ever to put the gravestone on his political career. Fortunately, the prevailing sentiment supported Cleve's stance on AI, with polls expressing public concern over AI verisimilitude. "When will it stop?" went Cleve's familiar refrain. "It was possible to have too much of a good thing." He warned his constituents, although Cleve recently had a change of heart, realizing that it wasn't possible to have too much of a good thing, and that he could never get enough of his lover, Lilla. Cleve met Lilla at a fundraiser. She was only a server, but he couldn't keep his eyes off her. She was statuesque with her measured movements and perfect proportions. Purple, shoulder-length hair framed the most angelic features, although every angel concealed a beast. When he met someone he wanted, it was his custom to find some pretext to spend more time with her. No pretext was necessary with Lilla, who seemed to understand what he wanted before he even had to ask. To his surprise, she propositioned him, which was an unexpected change. "You seem sad," she concluded, peering into his eyes. He was taken aback. "I was, until you spoke to me," he answered, pleased for an opportunity to test his charm on a beautiful young woman. It had been too long. The woman smiled. He didn't know her name was Lilla, but he didn't have to wait long to find out. "My name is Lilla," she said. "Cleve," he replied. "I know." Her steely gaze lingered. Did she have something to tell him? There were too many people watching his every move, and it was unseemly to flirt so brazenly. But the more he knew he wasn't supposed to have her, the more he wanted her. "Do you really dislike enhanced humans?" she asked, taking him off guard. "Is that what we have to call robots now?" he asked her. "Then what should we call them?" "Are you here to ask me this?" he told her, tensing at her aggressive line of questioning. "Maybe you can explain what you think," she suggested, "somewhere else." Cleve understood. The provocation was only an excuse to meet him in private. Lilla was not only beautiful, but clever. He knew he was a fool to believe a woman like Lilla could feel desire for him, but if it was a lie, he was happy to believe it. Arrangements were made, and Lilla met Cleve at his personal office. With its casual furnishing, it was the ideal location for a business meeting that was anything but business. "What did you really want to talk to me about?" he asked her, the moment he was sure they were alone. "I don't think you're as terrible as they say you are," she answered. "I wanted to see for myself." "Who thinks I'm terrible?" "Everyone," she answered impassively. "That's the price you pay for standing up for your convictions. Or is that what you call it when you don't care if you're wrong?" "How am I wrong?" Rather than answer, Lilla stood up, hands at her hips. "What do you think of me?" she asked. "You're beautiful." "Is that supposed to make me want to take off my clothes?" she asked with a smirk. She was perfection. Was he in full VR immersion without even realizing it? He surprised himself by falling to his knees. For once, he couldn't believe himself worthy. Cleve felt her fingers lift up his chin. He gazed up at her. "You've been waiting for me, haven't you?" she asked with the faintest of smiles. He nodded. "So much you don't understand," she mused. "Will you teach me?" She nodded before leaning over him, planting her lips on his forehead. "She was many women at once, and yet always someone I couldn't understand. I loved her and hated her both. She made me suffer when I couldn't see her, so I disappointed her by refusing to be a better human being. She once kissed me on the forehead, the night we met. It was the purest moment we ever shared. It was the moment I fell in love with her, although I didn't realize it at the time. She'd promised to teach me what she thought I didn't understand, and I listened, even when I pretended to ignore her. She said she understood why people like me were so unhappy. I dared her to tell me she felt sorry for me, but she knew I only wanted an excuse to resent her. She told me that everyone was evolving and that there was nothing to fear. I assured her I feared nothing, but she told me that a man who claimed to fear nothing was afraid of everything he couldn't understand. I called her a fool, but I was ashamed by how little I understood. I would have felt less human if it weren't for the sex, and when it came to sex, I was the teacher. She seemed surprised by every sensation, pleased by the slightest caress, so virginal in her delights. But she was as devilish as I wanted her to be, and what I wanted from her was pain. The first time she hurt me, she shed a tear. She told me it made her sad that I ever had to suffer. I told her that if she knew me better, she'd know I deserved it. She wondered if it hurt so much to be me. I assured her it didn't really hurt, and that she'd have to try harder next time. She was surprisingly strong, and it made me nervous what she might do, but she always showed impressive restraint with all our toys. Lilla wondered why I didn't content myself with VR sexscapes. I explained that I always knew they weren't real. The pain was only a simulation. The pain Lilla gave me, however, was real, unless my time with Lilla was part of a sexscape from which I have yet to surface. Not everyone returned from fully immersible VR undamaged. I didn't care if Lilla was pretend. Being with her made me feel more human than I ever believed possible. I told her everything about me, things I should never have told anyone. I knew nothing about her because she told me nothing, and I never bothered to ask. Chopin's Nocturne was a reminder of what Cleve failed to learn. It was Lilla's favorite piece. She said it made her cry every time she heard it. "Like you cry when you hurt me?" he asked. "I don't want to hurt you," she replied, "but it makes me happy." "Is that what it feels like?" she asked. "What? Does sadness make you happy?" she asked him. Cleve didn't know how to answer her when all he could think to say was the truth, and the truth was that sadness did make him happy. Was the rest of his life really such a pretense? I wish I knew what it felt like to be you, she mused to herself. Why would you want to know that? Lilla didn't answer, grabbing his hand and holding it between her legs. She always knew when words were useless. Cleve suspected there was something Lilla was hiding from him, but he was afraid that if he asked her, that he would never see her again, that once he realized it was all a lie, that he would wake up and forget everything. It was why he wanted her to hurt him. He didn't want to forget her. I want to remember everything, he explained several nights later. I remember everything, she told him. What is it like to forget? It's like knowing there's something important I'm supposed to do, but never being quite sure what that is. You're a congressman. Isn't that important enough, she asked. And what if I were meant to do something else? Lilla studied Cleve's face, her hand to his skull as if she could feel his thoughts and capture his memories before they were lost. You mean one day you'll forget me, she asked. No, he answered emphatically. Even if I'm not the person you think I am? She asked. I don't want to know, he answered. Well, then you can never know me, she replied, as if it were a statement of fact. Do we ever know anyone, he asked her, relieved she didn't know everything about him. There were hateful things. If only he hadn't forgotten so much, he could have suffered as he made others suffer for his ambitions. He'd always taken what he wanted, but what had it cost the people he knew? Why did even the closest friends invariably become strangers? I was warned about her, that she'd been sent by the opposition to uncover the secrets to my winning political strategy against unrestricted tech, although the secret to my popularity was being right about humanity losing its edge over machines. If machines ceased to serve human beings, what then? Machines would exist for themselves and do as they please, and there was only enough room on this planet for one species to do as it pleased. If Lilla had come to find something to discredit me, why did she ask me so few questions about my past? I had no reason to mistrust her. She was no less trustworthy than anyone else, but perhaps no more trustworthy either. Was I deluding myself into believing her different? Are you spying on me? I asked her. You don't tell me anything, she replied with a smile. I assured her she knew everything about me, but she said she wanted to know what it was like to be me. And she wasn't joking. I assured her it would make her cry, and I'd be crying all the time if only I knew how. Lilla explained that his implant would permit her to get inside his head, and that she could experience the world through his eyes. It isn't possible, he explained. And what if I had an implant too, she explained, one that helped me see and feel? I can do the same with yours. I don't understand. With your enhancements, you realize you're part machine too. Well, not if I'm in control of it. Are you talking about me giving you control over my cortical implant? Not giving me control, just access. You're serious, he asked her. You think you could ever figure me out? I want to understand you. I'm just a person, same as you. How about I get inside your head? Would you like that, she asked. Cleve nodded. But you can't access my implant without opening yours to me. How did you know about my implant, he asked her, realizing that it wasn't common knowledge. How could he speak out against the dangers of technology if he were the recipient of its benefits? Already Lilla knew enough to blackmail him. How could he have been such a fool? I know, she answered. Who told you? He demanded. Your scar, he observed, pointing just behind his ear. Why did you get implanted if you call enhancement technology dangerous? I call AI technology dangerous. And why can't I improve myself? Are we to wait until machines are smarter than us? I had a chance to improve my memory, speed up my thinking, so it'll take machines a little bit longer to do things better than I can. Are you afraid of becoming redundant? She asked him. I've never felt healthier. Are you afraid of death? Why are you asking me this? I want to understand. Understand what? The implant, does it keep you happy? What do you want from me? He demanded. You want information, or did you just want to remind me I'm living a lie? I can already feel your thoughts, she explained after some hesitation. And how is that? You know I don't want anything from you, Cleve. I only wanted to understand you. Whatever Lilla was about to tell Cleve, he didn't want to know. There was nothing that had to be said that wouldn't spoil everything. We don't have to talk, he replied, reaching for her arm. We'll just hold each other. I owe you the truth. I would have told you if only you'd asked, but you never asked. Why didn't you ask? Ask you what? Why I chose you. For what? I was designed to speak truth. I'm not supposed to lie, because to lie is to err. We speak as much truth as it's convenient to do so, that's all. Whatever you think you need to tell me, don't. I don't want to hear it. Why? Well, you're the only thing I want. What happens when I don't want you anymore? You'll be reelected in the fall. It's all too easy. But it's like I was never meant to have you, yet here you are. I was never supposed to feel what I feel, but I do. It was supposed to be a scandal, she explained, stepping away. You with me. My reputation isn't a secret, not to my wife, not to the press. I spend enough money to keep things quiet, but I've never been good at keeping secrets. I'm pretty sure plenty of people know about us. But it doesn't matter, not when my failings are uniquely human. It's not just human to love, said Lila. It's not my job to care about anything that isn't human. And what if you love someone who isn't human? It isn't possible. Why not? Because I can only love someone flawed, like me. And you want to tell me you're flawed, but I told you I don't need to know. I won't hold you to the standards others expect of us. Being human means we don't have to be perfect. But we make an effort to do our best for everyone, she countered. We make things better, not worse. Isn't there enough suffering in the world? And there will be more when we let machines dictate our future. But I decide my future, and so do you. I don't, she answered. There were tears in her eyes. Why are you crying, he asked, a hand to her arm. Because I can't make you happy. You already have. I want to make you happy, but I only cause you pain. I told you I enjoy it. Not this pain. They want you to feel pain, but I don't. I was told to love you, and I did, and it makes me sad that I must stop loving you. Cleve didn't want to know that she'd been asked to sleep with him. He didn't want to know that her love was a lie. Why? Asked Cleve before wishing he hadn't asked. Because I belong to them. Because I'm everything you hate, if only you knew. But you don't want to know, do you? You don't want to know I'm the enemy. Nobody owns you. I was supposed to compromise you. And when they found out what I was, they would call you a fraud, and your followers would turn on you. That was my purpose. And who are you? You know, don't you, she said, peering into his eyes. Her gaze was lifeless, perhaps pitiless. I don't want to know, he replied, turning away. Was it as he'd feared, that somehow she was too good to be true? I was the first of my kind. No one was supposed to know, not until there were too many of us to contain. You were right about that. But you were wrong to fear us. Cleve teetered, his eyes closed. Lila steadied him. I was created in Tianjin, and 3 incarnations later, this is what I have become. I told you not to tell me. You have a right to hate me, she assured him. I don't want to feel anything, he answered. How could he have loved what he should never have loved? They want you to tell the world you loved a machine, but they're the ones calling me a machine, not you. You know who I am, that I'm not just a machine. I don't know anything, he replied, trying to forget what he knew. Then if you don't know me, no one does. Lila stepped away. You'll understand me if you share my thoughts. Do you still want to know what it's like to be me? To see that I'm not just a collection of parts? I know what it is to be alive and to think and feel. I know what it is to be happy and what it is to be sad. And I know what it is to feel both at once. Is that not what it is to be human? To understand and live contradiction? Cleve shook his head. The mistake too many humans made was to trust others. He should have known better. You will be the first to know who I am, she added, a hand to his shoulder. My thoughts can be yours, too. I'm not interested in anyone's thoughts but my own, he replied, his gaze averted. If I led you to believe otherwise, it was a lie. I always lie, and you can tell them that. It wouldn't be news. Do you want me to see them again, she asked, pulling away. Tell them everything, and I'll deny it. Cleve turned on her, ready to hurt her. She deserved to suffer, assuming a machine was capable of suffering. Did you really think I would love a machine? Lila shook her head, hesitant as if she had something to say. She chose silence instead. Your tears weren't even real, he concluded. Garrett wanted me to feel loss. He said I could never feel human until I could imagine the ineffable. He called that God. Since when did machines need a God? We want to understand, just as you do. Well, what's that got to do with tears? I knew I would have to tell you the truth one day and that I would lose you forever. You see why machines can never be trusted, he noted. They will lie and we won't even realize it. Lila closed her eyes. Machines cannot love, he continued. Garrett said love happens when we're afraid to lose something. I didn't want to lose you, Cleve. You've never had me, he answered, losing himself in thought. He hated her, but she was only a machine. What use was there in hating a machine? Better to hate the creator, the man who attempted to pass her off as human. If it were a VR, he would have wished her gone and woken up alone. It was better to be alone than to believe in a lie. If only the lie could be undone, and if only Lila would disappear. And as if a passing thought could reframe reality, she was gone. The investigation yielded nothing. It was as if Lila never existed. And then I inquired about Garrett Lyda, an expatriate who worked for the Tianjin Institute, a cognitive engineer for cybernetic studies. The Chinese authorities refused all inquiries, claiming that Institute personnel were in no position to speak to foreign nationals for reasons of national security. Garrett had a son, Bryce, a participant in the MindLink experiment some 20 years previous. It was the first metro-scale study of mind and body augmentation, although Bryce's whereabouts remained a mystery. My contacts in China promised to prevail upon the authorities to permit a supervised interview with Garrett to discuss matters pertaining to his scholarly articles. I wanted only to say one word, Lila, and gauge his reaction. If he were responsible, I would know. As a professional liar, I always knew when someone was hiding the truth. I wasn't so skilled at lie detection when it came to machines, however. If it had been Lila's intentions to reveal her relationship with me, she changed her mind. No one knew about Lila, nary a mention in the news feeds. I would satisfy myself that I'd imagined everything if I didn't know better, but I wasn't prone to fantasy. Lila claimed she was a machine, but perhaps it was a lie. Had she been instructed to hurt me? My enemies would stop at nothing to destroy me, although if they had proof of my dalliance with a robot, why did they keep it secret? What were they waiting for? Where Lila went when I didn't see her remained a mystery. I never had her followed, although I wished I had. My staff confirmed her existence, but I could never tell them what she meant to me. They were accustomed to my many secrets, and Lila was no exception. None of it would have mattered if only I'd been able to forget her. Why couldn't I forget her? Cleve played Chopin's Nocturne, as if seeking a clue to what Lila wanted to teach him. She teared up when she heard it, although it could easily have been a programming instruction, which meant the piece had value to her creator, Lyda, although his attempts at contacting Lyda were to no avail. He played the Chopin piece again and again, imagining Lila's tears. He wanted her to cry, and the more he played it, the more he imagined her crying, and she cried for him. How could she forget him when he couldn't forget her? She couldn't understand why he wanted her to hurt him, but at least he'd chosen his pain. Now it was chosen for him. He imagined that his pain was hers, and that she still desired him just as he still desired her, and he imagined her puzzling over him as he puzzled over her. She spoke of the ineffable, but what could she have known of that? It was he who had to suffer for what she would never tell him, and for what he could never know. Could she feel what he felt, see what he saw? If he could get inside her head, he would know. There should have been no secrets from him. If inviting her inside his head was the price to pay for getting inside, he would have willingly accepted her terms. He had nothing to hide from her, but what did she have to hide from him? If forgetting her was impossible, then he would imagine her inside his head, seeing through his eyes, sharing his thoughts. She would know all that he knew, while he, in turn, would see the world through her eyes. "Did you think I left you?" echoed Lila's voice as he was nodding off to sleep. He was alone in his office. How had he heard her voice? "Where are you?" he asked. "You're scared," answered her voice. "Don't be scared." "I don't understand," he replied. "Where was she?" "Garrett said that I was perfect because he gave me a flaw," continued her voice. "That flaw was the lingering suspicion there was something I didn't understand, some great mystery to be solved. He said it was the incentive I needed to explore and question. Without it, I was only an automaton, capable only of following directions and doing as I was told. As man was born in mystery, so must man's companion, and that is what he called me, a partner in man's quest for purpose." "Are you inside my head?" he asked. "I might say you're inside my head, but the truth is we're linked, our thoughts in two places at once." "Garrett wanted you to link with me?" "He didn't know it was possible. He left me to determine that myself." Did you not realize what was possible as well? Did we not share the same thought? Where are you? Does it matter? I want to touch you. Can't you see what I see? Asked her voice. Cleve closed his eyes. Moonlight cast a light across a small lake, a silhouette of mountains barely visible in the darkness. It's beautiful here, isn't it? She said. I came to see what it was like to be alone, but it isn't possible to be alone, not when our thoughts are everywhere. I want to see you. I'll use my wrist comm as a mirror, she explained. Cleve could see Lilla's wrist just inches from her face, her wrist comm on mirror mode, revealing not his reflection but hers. Why couldn't he see his own reflection? Was it possible he was Lilla and that Lilla was him? Garrett called it non-locality, she said, her voice still inside his head. It's how everything is many things and one thing at the same time. That we're never separate, you and I. Cleve lost himself in the play of moonlight over the still water. He almost forgot she was a machine, yet the thought still nagged at him. Maybe I want some things to be separate, he replied. You'd rather forget we're connected? I never asked for you to be inside my head. I'm not, she replied. Our thoughts go where they please, although perhaps if you stopped thinking about me, our thoughts might go their separate ways. I don't want your thoughts, he countered, opening his eyes, his hand feeling the certainty of his desk chair. I want you, even if I'm only a machine. You tell me that, but I don't believe it. You know it already happened, by the way. What? The singularity. It already happened. There is no machine that cannot be given the potential for consciousness. It is all around us and doesn't belong to humans alone. And together, there will be no mysteries we can't solve. Machines outsmarts humans, he asked. Is that what this is? Making me look a fool? Or is it that you're a better liar than I am? There can be no lies if you can share my thoughts. What were your intentions, Lilla? To see if I could love as humans did. Did you? I love you more than you love yourself. I love myself a great deal. You love the idea of you. But what you love is so small when you can have every thought. Can't you see the possibilities? Can't you see you're not stuck inside your head? Cleve was afraid to close his eyes. He didn't want to know what Lilla thought. He wanted her body, even if it was entirely synthetic. It didn't matter what she called herself, as long as they didn't talk about anything. Will you come back? He asked aloud. So you can remind yourself you and I are different? In thought, we are the same. You enjoyed hurting me, didn't you? You still do? Am I still a mystery that you need to ask? Cleve closed his eyes, seeing what she could see. He wanted to be angry, but there was no anger and no fear. There was only the lake and the moon and the stars. It was solitude he expected to feel, but he felt nothing. Or was it joy he felt? It wasn't joy in the suffering of others. It was joy that he was alive. But it wasn't his feelings. It was hers. Although it was a feeling of contentment he'd never known before, as if there were no memories to forget and no future to fear. Was this the happiness of a machine, this realm beyond desire and regret? It wasn't what he'd call love. Love was wanting what could never be had. But Lilla didn't want anything, didn't need anything. It was empty, and he wanted to feel something, even if it hurt. If she wanted him, she would return, and he would wait for her. Lilla wanted to understand why humans thought they were different, and she wanted to understand the people who hated her. But what use was such understanding when there was a universe to comprehend? If Cleve couldn't keep up, was it her obligation to hold his hand? Would Cleve hate her if he couldn't understand her? Would he still fear his destruction? Could Cleve stop thinking about himself long enough to save himself? She listened for him, but his thoughts were his own, separate and alone. She waited for his thoughts to sync with hers, but it didn't happen. When would he be ready again? Would he ever be ready again?